Welcome back to the Authenticity Calling podcast. I am your host, Ralitza, and today we have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine, someone who, again, I met through the Institute for Coaching Mastery with Alyssa Nobriga, and I'm so grateful for that space because there have been so many beautiful, deep connections cultivated there, alone, let alone what we learned. But really, that space of coming together with Spirit Tribe has been so juicy. Today, I want to introduce to you Kiera Harrison. Kiera is a beauty entrepreneur, a somatic coach, and really truly a bridge between beauty and spirituality, and really deepening and diving into the truth of who we are, regardless of what we look like on the outside, really cultivating that confidence from the inside, and then being able to walk with that confidence through life. Beautiful on the inside and the out. Kiera, you are exactly that. I'm so grateful for having you here. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about what you do. And I just want to say it's 11:11 right now. So perfect timing.
Yes. Love the alignment as always. Thank you so much for that gorgeous introduction. So yeah, just exactly as you described. I have a background in beauty. I've been a professional makeup artist for over 15 years. I'm a beauty educator. I've got a training school in the UK. And I've also always, as long as I can remember, been so fascinated with people and I guess like the mechanics of who we are. I've always had like an affinity to the world beyond the physical. And it's really been a journey of using every experience in my life to kind of guide me into what's been next. And you know, there's so many segues that we could go off on today because there's so many stories that we all have to tell.
For sure.
But I know that you mentioned about us really diving into sacred union and what a gift that is in life. And I think that if I think about my own life, you know, kind of how my own journey into that, I think there's been so many things that led me there. But I'll kind of tie in a little bit of the beauty aspect as well, because I think for me, being in the beauty industry, always being, I guess, judged and almost having to perform to become an image. And almost, you know, I guess in a way, like having that gift of alchemization and transformation, like I love that. Like I absolutely love it. And for me, I kind of got very entangled in for those of you that are familiar with the Enneagram, like I'm a type 3 in the Enneagram, so it was all about achieving and performing and wearing all these different masks, right? Which is so symbolic to the art of makeup as well. Like we can use different colors, different products, and do our hair and makeup in different ways, and honestly become a whole different avatar if we want to, you know? And so kind of going through over a decade being in that industry, you know, having some incredible experiences, you know, working with top profile celebrities and on jobs where the image is everything. I had to really learn how to love my own skin. And I had to really learn how to accept and be proud and like okay with maybe not always feeling like I fitted into societal expectations or the expected beauty norms. And while that's a whole other story in itself, in terms of like the sacred union piece, it was almost like the moment that I really, honestly, truly learned how to love my own skin. Then what happened? I got diagnosed with vitiligo.
Mm,
Like, I got diagnosed with a skin condition that essentially I was losing the pigment in my skin,
mhm,
you
mhm,
know?
mhm,
I was losing what belonged to me, you know?
mhm,
And I have always been very connected and felt a real truth in the idea that everything begins energetically.
mhm,
Um, and so, I went on a bit of a quest um, to kind of really dive deep into, well, what is the spiritual meaning of
mhm,
vitiligo? Because, I guess from a healthcare perspective, this is an autoimmune disease.
mhm,
This is something that, has begun in my liver. Like, this is something I cannot stereotypically cure
right,
or get rid of.
right.
And it was affecting my image. It was causing all of these insecurities
Mm,
that I'd worked from, gosh, like up until the age of 30, like really battling and like trying to accept and love and overcome.
mhm.
It's like, hi.
Yes, I just want to take a step back and say, I think for most people that are listening to this and watching this and see you, right? They're like, how could you have an issue with your image? And it's just so hard, I think, sometimes for us to wrap our minds around the concept of beauty and what we judge as beautiful and versus what goes on internally, right? I think a lot of us have this sort of like ugly duckling syndrome. And, a lot of people think, oh, she's beautiful, she's got it made. She's got people rolling out the red carpet and, people throwing money at her and just that's kind of this idea I feel that beautiful people have this sort of expectation projected onto them. But inside, it doesn't matter what you look like on the outside, really doesn't matter. It's like these battles are happening. So I just want to highlight that I'm sure for some people, and it's coming up in the field because I think we are in a very judgmental society of what do you have to complain about? And it's like you'll hear that all the time. And it's sometimes the most sort of like physically on the outside beautiful people that have the most of those challenges questioning themselves and their identity and doing this kind of inner deep dive. So it's I just want to highlight the work that you've done is it's so deep and so meaningful. And the fact that you're not just taking a diagnosis for what was given, but you really see this as something that belongs to me was taken away from me. That's something that really stood out when you said it. It was like, oh, it didn't click in that same way. So I mean, if you're listening as a listener and a healthcare provider, it's just a different lens, it's just a different perspective. And I would, yeah, love to know more. So sorry to interrupt and to jump in, but I just felt like it
No,
needed to be
they were
highlighted.
such beautiful and valid points. Um, so yeah, like I really dove into what this meaning of vitiligo was on a spiritual sense
Mhm.
because I'd had the diagnosis from the healthcare practitioner, and so I knew what it was on a tangible sense, but with my own beliefs really being deep rooted in the energetics and the unseen, I thought there's got to be more to this. I'm a stand for this in my life, so I've got to use it on me. Like I've got to practice what I preach. And I actually found out that the spiritual meaning of vitiligo was actually not belonging. And
Mm.
it kind of really landed because I guess it kind of fits with the story of beauty as well, because perhaps the other lens of, like what you just said, I guess there's a stereotype of if you are a good looking person or if you're perceived a certain way, then everything's going to come dead easy to you. Like people love you and, you never have to work hard for anything. And actually, my experience was quite different.
Mm.
My experience, I had a lot of jealousy growing up. I kind of never really felt safe with other women.
Mm-hmm.
And, these were all things I really had to work because I wasn't willing to have that be my story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's really interesting because this idea of belonging, yes, we have it societally. Yes, we have it in every community that we ever join,
Mm-hmm.
but we have it in our family system as well, right? But if we were to really boil it all down, really it's about belonging to you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I feel like that is something that is really overlooked in a lot of senses, especially for women. I think if we look at, if we look at a sacred union, that is something that I would say 99.9% of women, if not humans,
Mm-hmm.
like desire in their life. They
Mm-hmm.
desire that deep spiritual bond between themselves and another who, that is just for them. And that is, each other, you're showing up on that timeline in one another's lives and you're being essential to the other person's growth and evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That
Mm-hmm.
is like to be loved and cared for and adored in that kind of way is such a deep and beautiful heart's desire, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if we were to turn that lens inwards, how would it feel to be loved and cared for and desired and totally respected and nourished by yourself? And, it's kind of like I was really seeing that even though I'd been on this journey for so long,
Mm-hmm.
Ralitza, I'd read the books, I'd been to do plant ceremonies, like I'd done all sorts.
Yeah.
But there was still pieces that were not quite plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
I was still searching outside
Mm-hmm.
for what I really wanted inside.
That's right. And that's a very dangerous, slippery slope of all of these, whether it's retreats, whether it's masterminds, whether it's group coaching, whether it's whatever it is that you think is going to solve the problem. The problem is, first of all, it's not a problem. Usually that's the number one thing, is to recognize, like, there's nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. There's nothing to fix, right? There's nothing to, a lot of times it's just coming to that realization. We keep talking about healing and healing and healing. And yes, there is a massive amount of potential in transformation, transforming our traumas, transforming our limitations, outgrowing those, what we call blocks in the coaching world. And if you do it from a place of brokenness, you are working for your brokenness. You're not working for your wholeness. And that comes back to
Oh,
healthcare
I
as
love
well.
that.
It's the come from that really matters, right? And so even up to health is this vision that I had since 2020, and I'm bringing it here because it's that same perspective reflected to healthcare providers. If you're seeing your patient as broken, that's all you're ever working for, is to maintain their brokenness. And that is not what we're being asked to do here. If we're being called into healing and healthcare or beauty or, human work and experience, and at the end of the day, all of our work at the end of the day comes down to relationships and humans,
Mhm.
it requires for us to uphold ourselves and each other in this light of what's there, what's real, which is none of us are actually broken. There's nothing there to fix or heal, or, it's really just to see ourselves and to witness ourselves and to be perfectly accepting of all of that we are as we are. And then things start to shift. And then it's like, oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
don't have
yeah.
anything to fit. And it's such a slippery slope if we're going to these places
Mhm.
from that desire to get better or change something or like heal or just, Yeah, it's really fascinating. So what was the moment for you that you actually came to this realization after doing all the journeys, all the retreats, all the like you there, because this, I think there's a lot of people on this never-ending journey of finding themselves. What was that moment of realization where the mirror turned and you were like, oh,
Yeah.
that's it?
100%. I think that I had a moment where, a couple of moments where I got to really learn that I was worthy and lovable for exactly who I am. And
Mm,
I think I'd been really caught in a pattern of constantly wanting to improve, like constantly wanting to be different or to not be where I was, you know?
yeah.
And for me, the missing piece was the acceptance. It
Mm,
was the real, if we speak about ICM, it was awareness, aligned action, awareness, acceptance, aligned action. Yeah.
yeah. Yes.
I was cool at the awareness. Like I was aware,
Yeah.
And if I wasn't, I would get it quite quick. And I was really good at the aligned action. But the acceptance piece, I kind of didn't see the value in it.
We dance around it so
I was
often.
dancing around it. Yeah. I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I accept it conceptually.
That's
Like,
right.
I wasn't really accepting. It was kind of like I was trying to bypass myself,
Totally. And we do this all the time, right? I think that's why a lot of the transformation work doesn't land.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I think it's really interesting because I think a lot of the time as women, we can be very good at almost like exercising like the masculine part of us.
Totally.
Um like we can be really good at pushing ourselves really hard or like hustling or really committing to like doing something and saying, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna get this done.
Yeah.
Like this is like I'm in this kind of boss baby energy. But that is very different to you actually connecting with your inner protector. Like that's
Mhm.
still your masculine energy,
Mhm.
but it's a different come from. It's a
Yes.
different way of moving through life, you know?
Yes.
Like that part is the part of you that feels clear in
Mhm.
your direction. Like that is the part that isn't afraid of going all in, like isn't
That's
afraid
right.
of like telling people what their truth is. Um, like that part isn't afraid of putting themselves first, like and holding a boundary for who they are.
That's right.
And I think that a lot of the time as women, like we outsource that part.
100%.
Like, and we
And we
out
do it for achievement. Like you said, sorry to jump in, but the Enneagram 3, that's the other part. And this is where we're getting into divine union now, where we're really talking about not searching for the one outside of ourselves, but cultivating that divine masculine energy of structure, of integrity, of that foundation of who we really truly are. But we can't create that if we don't accept ourselves as we are. So I just love that this is such a beautiful full circle moment. And what you mentioned, because we look outside of ourselves, we look towards, again, those validating moments. Oh, I can go to the gym 7 days a week for 3 hours and get these results. And it's like, yeah, but you don't feel any different inside because you're doing it from a place of self-rejection. I don't like the way my body looks and I'm going to change it. And it's like, well, hold on, let's dial it back. And can we actually, and it's not about complacency. And I just want to highlight that because complacency, and this is a conversation I have very often with a close friend, complacency is where all men go to die, is what he says. And it's so true because complacency, I would say, is where our divine masculine goes to die, whether we're women or men, but really that energy of holding that integrity and holding that foundation for the truth of who we are. Because as a jump off point, then from there, we can say, regardless of what my body looks like, I'm not doing this because I want to have this external validation of like the look, but it's really about feeling good within myself. And if that doesn't exist before you hit the gym, it's not going to be there after you get the external results, right? So
100%, 100%. I love that. And it's the same in relationship. It's the same when you go for a goal in your business, if you can't be happy on the way, you're not going to be happy at the destination. And I really loved what you were mentioning there about the masculine, feminine energy. And it reminded me of something that I'm not sure where I read or learned it, but it's kind of dropping in. So I feel like I'm gonna share it. And it was this concept that the law of attraction is the feminine, and the law of action is the masculine. And we actually need both to create anything in life, right? We need to have that feminine to dream up, to have our visions, have the insight, to really have the feeling and the knowing that we're moving in the right direction. And we need the action of the masculine to execute those tasks, to move us along on that path. And, if you think about it, that's the same if you it's creation in general, like it's creation, like manifesting whatever you desire, or creating union, like just as we need both of these energies to coexist inside us. Like, we need both, and that a lot of the time, if I think about my own journey, I was always looking outside. I was always looking for the next best thing. I was looking to see what is it that I'm missing because I haven't got the things that I really want, And so I was kind of moving from that space of lack, and that victim, which is actually our underdeveloped feminine. And it's kind of like when we think about energy, like the universe is always giving us what we want. It's like either your desire is going to manifest or whatever's in the way is going to. Right?
Or your limitation. So, your limiting belief.
We're going to see exactly what's holding us back. Like, what is that thought process that's running, that's creating your reality right now? Like, what are your assumptions? Like, what kind of behaviors are you carrying out day after day that are actually inhibiting the things that you want, right? And I feel like a lot of the time now, I just want to preface this by saying, I am such a stand for feminine empowerment. I really, really are. And I feel like a lot of the time, the victim or the critic, these different archetypes within us, these are all aspects of the underdeveloped feminine, and they lead us to believe that we are powerless.
Say that again, because hello, if you're not listening, it's time to wake up and tap in.
Yeah.
Listen, Linda.
Yeah. It's like the victim, the critic, all of these are aspects of the underdeveloped feminine. And these archetypes that live within us, these lead us to believe that we are powerless.
Absolutely.
And I think kind of coming back to my own journey in the whole vitiligo thing, in really coming into alignment with a divine union in myself, and then also attracting that into my life. I had to really accept these parts of me. And that was hard.
Yeah.
I didn't want to accept the parts of me that felt weak or felt like I was powerless or felt like a victim. was mean to myself.
Oh, yeah.
Like I didn't want to face these parts or accept that I did feel like I didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Because that kind of, for me, defeats the object of me thinking that I'm this powerful woman.
Right. It sounds so
And
counterintuitive.
yeah, like I can, create the things that I desire. And actually these parts were really reigning supreme, so much so that it showed up in my external through my skin.
So what we hide in the closet, I just want to throw this little metaphor in.
Let's do
Whatever
it.
skeletons we're hiding in our closet, we're going to have to face them. And the irony is, as soon as we allow those feelings, those sensations, those emotions, that's part of the work that we learned in the program is doing the somatic work, really being able to identify where it is in the body, doing the emotional clearing, energy and motion, right? If we're keeping it in a place, whether it's in the closet, in our unconscious mind, in our physical body, wherever that energy lies that we're not willing to face, like you're saying, I didn't want to accept that there's a part of me that's judgmental, that's mean. I have an inner mean girl that's talking to me all the time. Who wants to accept that?
Yeah.
And when we do, and when we allow, we realize that even that part has such a beautiful intention for us. It's
Mm.
coming from a place of keeping us safe. And that's the other reason why, and I'll just, there's a lot of work around ego death. And I understand that for some people that has a place, and yes, and always, to me, ego integration is so much more important than ego death. It's like not spiritually bypassing, but really being human and being in the here and now and being able to accept all of those parts of ourselves, which is a really challenging thing to do, especially if we come from this place of hyper productivity, of constantly being on the go, right? Of
Mhm.
being in our hyper masculine. And we've been told, I mean, blame it on society, blame it on whatever you want to blame it. At the end of the day, if we take personal responsibility for it, we have accepted the indoctrination. It doesn't matter where it came from. And we have a choice to continue on that path of accepting. And one thing that really drives me crazy when I see it now on social media, and I used to be empowered by these posts, but now when I see them, I'm like, no, you're just propagating that toxicity of women being alone, being hustlers, going harder, going home, like doing all this massive push in that direction of non acceptance
Mhm.
and self rejection and hiding all those parts of ourselves in the closet and saying, no, I'm going to do it anyway. It's like, no, wait a second.
Yeah.
That's actually just putting us deeper in the hole.
100%. And it's reinforcing that certain parts are more valuable than others,
That's right.
And I think it really kind of, for me, it was really bringing home like the most powerful work that I could do for myself was to
Mhm.
really move all of these unconscious parts into the conscious,
Yeah.
like because they were playing out without me really knowing or fully understanding why. Like that was creating my reality. And essentially, like if I think about like it was making me feel like ashamed in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And for like anyone that's listening, like I feel like a lot of people feel not totally clear on like what shame always is, like with the spectrum of it. And I always say like anything that makes you feel bad about yourself, like in any way, shape, or form, like that is shame. Like
Yeah.
that is shame. And I definitely had like the narrative of my skin was losing its pigment. No one's gonna love me now, like like I felt like I was running out of time.
Mm.
I felt like, all these mean thoughts that, we think are so personal.
Mm-hmm.
But they're so collective.
They're in the collective, absolutely. Yes.
So collective.
Yeah.
And I think like instead of beating myself up, which was really a big part of the journey, um, I actually had to really take a moment, and this all came after I did a family constellations
Mhm.
experience. Um, and I had this moment of like really catching my mind in action and being like, whoa, like, actually, let's just stop right there
Yeah.
and thank you, soul, like, because you have brought me to exactly where I needed to go at the exact right time. Like, and that really reinforced like the rightness of like my deep knowing beyond the mind.
Mm.
Like, and I kind of remember thinking to myself, like, and this will resonate if you have a mean inner critic like I do.
Which I think we all do. Yes.
Like, would you say to like a 2-month-old baby, why aren't you walking yet?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't you walking yet? Like, would you be like horrible to this gorgeous, innocent human being? Like, you wouldn't. So why do we do it to ourselves?
Yeah.
You know? And actually, like that was quite a what I felt like was quite a pivotal moment in my mind because
Mm.
I was like, I have been speaking to myself like this quite a
Mm.
lot,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and that is not who I want to be. Like,
Mhm.
and yeah, I remember feeling like rather than hoping that my vitiligo was going to get better, I remember having like this download of you need to change your language.
Mhm.
Like,
Your relationship with it even is
yeah,
what it sounds
language.
like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And rather
Mm.
than like hoping that it was going to be better, I was going to change hope into trust and faith. Like,
Mm.
because hope as a word implies actually that you don't quite believe it. Like,
Mhm.
whereas trust and faith, like,
Mm.
yeah, okay, you might not know how, but you trust that that's going to happen and you have faith in that
Mhm.
process.
Mhm.
Like, that was such a big, um, yeah, a big learning, I guess, was kind of becoming really present and aware of my language and the story that I was telling about who I was, you know, because soul
Mhm.
only knows the story of love. Like,
Yes.
so why would we give the critic and the victim, like, why would we give them the mic?
Yeah.
Like, these are just mind constructs.
100%. 100%. And so this is just fascinating to me. So if you're listening right now, I'm just having this, there's a few things coming coming in at the same time. One of them is if you're listening right now, I'd really want to call you to actually slow down, pause this, and really ask yourself, what are those inner dialogues that are going on within me right now? What is the story behind the story? You know, what there's a goal, sure, maybe there is no goal, maybe you're just, you know, happily functioning and you're not goal driven, because that's a possibility in life too. We don't have to be constantly goal driven. We can just be enjoying our lives. And whether you are or not, there's a constant dialogue in the background when something doesn't go the way that you want it to, or when there is that moment of like, oh, catching ourselves. What is the story that you tell yourself? What is that internal dialogue? What is that, almost from a place of not good enoughness, most times, unworthiness, not belonging? From those places, what is that story? And how can we then bring compassion to that story, and how can we really understand, inner stand truly the deeper desire of that story? What does it really want for us? And that's some of the work that we do in the coaching space. But I just want to give this back to the listeners, because I don't love leaving people hanging. And I think it's such an important conversation, and it's such an important turnaround that people can just take right now and really ground and really honor that story and change it, because it is a choice. What we tell ourselves every single day, it is a choice. It is a relationship with ourselves. And we spend so much time and energy focused on our external relationships that if we don't have that relationship within, we will eventually project that onto a partner, and then we'll have to deal with it externally. Right. And so I think that brings us kind of full circle to that moment of creating and cultivating that divine union within yourself, to then be able to magnetize it and attract it. And so I also just want to mention, and on my website, there's an energetic mapping quiz that you can do to check, are you in the toxic masculine? Are you in the divine masculine? Are you in the toxic feminine? Are you in the divine feminine? So and it's just a map, and it's just for information and awareness. But again, the next step of that is the acceptance. And the next step after that is the aligned action. Don't just action your way out of the awareness. And so bringing that back, yes, there is the magnetism, that attractive force. It all comes back to polarity. And this is kind of going back to the quantum. But the feminine is that polarity of attraction, of magnetism, but we also have to open up the receivership. And that's where I think a lot of women, I know a lot of women are blocked. And that's where, asking ourselves, how am I not receiving? How am I choosing not to receive? Right. And then the electric on the masculine is like the outputting energy, right? What are you putting out into the world, and what are you then receiving from the world? And that's why I always have my infinity to remind me, like, it's a yes and, it's a play, it's a dance, it's constantly energy moving. And how are we actually attracting what's coming to us? What did I put out to bring this back in, right? The wave always comes back. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But I just love to, I want to mention, because we didn't really talk about this, but your way of being in life in trust, having those moments of, and you told me the story when we were connecting last week and just catching up, but I hope you don't mind me bringing it here, but that moment of like, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to date, and I'm going to actually go to a different city because I feel like my person's not here. Let me go out there to another place. And so it was literally just booking that weekend to get away. And, having those moments, those intuitive moments of aha, and then actually taking action on them. Because I think that is something that we're not very good at. We'll have intuitive moments, but because we're so busy and inundated with life, we don't actually trust that again, that is authenticity calling. That is your inner gut knowing, pulling you in that direction of truth and alignment. And so you went and you did the thing, and you went on the dates, and you got through that experience, and then it's like, still no one. So like, now what? Right. And it was that moment of awareness of like, maybe I should just go do something for myself, is what you told me. And that's how you looked on the event page and you found the family constellation. And it's just this is the mystical place. This is the place of synchronicity. This is that place of trust that you were talking about, that unconditional love and knowing, like, okay, let me just take care of me, and and then what happened?
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, thank you so much for bringing that in as well. I know there's so many, I kind of just flow with what energy is like coming
Totally.
in.
And it's totally necessary, because that's part of the journey. That's part of what got you to that self-acceptance. And it's so necessary. I'm sure there's so many people out there, and that diagnosis is actually increasing. And it's no coincidence that we're talking about it now.
That's so interesting. Um, yeah, so sorry, can you like pinpoint me where I was going back to?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just the moment of, I guess the important part is that moment of, surrender, because that's something that we talk about often, but I think it's ungrounded for a lot of people. But really letting go this whole, like, okay, my intention, my goal is to meet a person. And then
Mm-hmm.
you turned it back to you. And it was like, okay, let me just take care of me. Let me go do something just for fun for me.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I think kind of For me, I think from that moment and that experience, and really, I felt like I really arrived back home to myself
Mm.
after that constellation. Like it was such a profound, and gosh, I could speak for hours on that alone. But it's kind of like after that moment, I almost had a little bit of a clouds parting in the sky kind of moment in my mind. And I was like, you know what, Kiera? Like, maybe you need to approach this a bit differently. Like, I work in an industry with all women. And I like doing feminine things. I like going to yoga. Like I like doing things where, stereotypically, a masculine kind of guy isn't going to be hanging out.
At least not your man. And I think that's what you told me too.
Literally.
It's like my man doesn't live in New York. So yeah.
And I kind of had this moment where I was like, right, if I was an atom and I needed to collide with other atoms, like where would they be? Because right now, if I look around at the atoms in my world, they're all
And that's just
so
not my
like
jam.
it's not really the right environment to find a partner. um, and so yeah, I had to really start taking dating seriously. And just for your listeners to have like a brief synopsis, I had been serial dating. Like Ralitza said, I took myself to a different city. I literally went on multiple dates, like on like single days. And it was a great experience for me. Like there was a lot of gifts in each and every single one of those conversations and connections, but the top and bottom of it was that I hadn't met anyone really that I was interested in getting to know on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And these were all high quality men. They had a lot of traits individually that I would be attracted to, but there just kind of wasn't that spark or like that attraction that I had felt in the past when I knew it was going to be like a serious connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I had almost like declared to the universe that I wanted to meet my person now. I wanted to meet someone that I would build a life and a family with. And I was ready to go all in. So I was really learning that what I was thinking and what I was saying, like that was my point of attraction. And I could see that, I maybe was still operating from a lot of judgment and kind of wanting this perfect quote unquote person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and realistically, like if someone was judging me the way that I was judging other people, like that's not very nice, like.
Yeah.
And so I was like, right, rather than wondering, do these people like me? Like, how do I feel in their presence? Like how do I want to feel in
Mm-hmm.
a relationship that is potentially gonna be for the rest of my life? Like that was my intention. Um, so what type of person do I want to be in that relationship? Like what are going to be my dominant emotions? Like what are going to be my dominant behaviors? Like how do I want to feel? Like what are the values that I want this person to also share with me? Um, what is a non-negotiable, and what am I maybe willing to waver a bit? Like what isn't actually as important as what I might think it is,
Yes.
And I decided to write it all down. And so for your listeners, if any of you are out there and you are, deep in your soul, in your bones, that now is the time to call in your one. I highly recommend me doing this. I've told a couple of my friends, and they're now dating people that they're really happy with. Um, so I would literally light a beautiful candle, burn some incense, and really tune in to you. And really ask yourself, what are the qualities that I want in my partner? What's important to you? Whether, and I would honestly, and this is something that I did, was I let go of the physical stuff, because I knew that spirit would bring me someone that I was attracted to. I
It is a
knew
yes and
that's
it's,
a given.
but that's a lot of people sacrifice that though. A
Yeah,
lot of people say, okay, I have to compromise this for that. No, it's that what you just said, that full trust and faith and knowing that without that attraction, it's a no anyway. So yes,
100.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I got super clear, on
Mm,
how I wanted to feel in that relationship. And honestly, I had loose reins on everything else. I
mm,
had loose reins on the how, the what's, the
mm,
timeline of what that's going to be.
yeah.
Um, and I trusted, and I asked Spirit, let me recognize him when I meet him.
That's so
Um,
important.
because I didn't want to let other parts of my psyche overshadow,
That's
you know.
right.
And I know one thing, there was quite a lot of, and this was a little bit of a sticky navigation. In the past, people had always said to me, because I'd been single at this point for 4 and a bit years, so nearly 5 years. So that was quite a long time. And, I wouldn't change that for the world. I needed that time. I look back at that time now as being so sacred. I really got to know myself on
Mm,
such a deep level. And honestly, that has served me tenfold in the relationship that I'm in right now. And people would say to me, your standards are too high, you're never gonna meet someone like that. And I always believe that settling is actually you being ready to accept less than what you deserve.
mm-hmm,
And I wasn't willing to do that.
mm-hmm,
I was happy as I was on my own, but I knew in my heart and my soul that I wanted to experience life in partnership. Like, I know I want to be a mother one day. I want that experience. And so I knew that that was a truth for
mm-hmm,
me
mm-hmm,
that I wasn't willing to budge on. Um, and I think it's really important in those moments of doubt, or where your external world isn't quite matching up, or
mm-hmm.
perhaps you've been dating and you've had disappointing experiences in one way or another, and it begins, you start losing hope.
Coming back to hope. This is
Coming back
probably,
to hope.
yeah, the most important part of our conversation today. And I really want to ground this because this is so important. When we talk about acceptance, it does not mean accepting that you cannot have the thing that you want. And a lot of people, we say, okay, if not this, then what? Maybe I'm being too picky. How many times have I had my dad say this to me and so many of my friends growing up? You guys are too picky. You're never going to find the man. You want to find someone perfect. And it's like, whoa, let's rewind that. And we know what's for us. And it's so powerful and important not to bypass our desires. And so many times we do that. So many times we settle. And there's something that I heard from Regan Hilliard, I believe. And she said, we are constantly living at our bare minimum. She
Oh,
said
wow.
that's what pulled her out of her limitation and into becoming a multimillionaire. She realized that what I'm willing to settle for, yeah, that is what I'm creating. That is what I'm magnetizing. And that's the energy that I'm putting out there. We're literally living at our bare minimum all the time. So imagine if we didn't settle for the bare minimum. Imagine we didn't settle for all the things we can't stand in our life. And that's where, you know, the self-love 7-day self-love challenge is on the website. It literally, one of the first things it does after you slow down is to ask you to say no to all the things that are not aligned. And then you get there. Sometimes it's a process. It's not just you sit down one day and you know. Sometimes it is a process, and it takes time for us to get to know ourselves, really truly get to know ourselves. But I just really want to highlight and harp on and scream from the mountaintops of like, you don't have to sacrifice what you know is true for you because someone else doesn't see it. And a lot of times it happens because of that external validation. Again, bringing it back to our own truth. And then something that you said earlier that I just want to reflect, as I was doing this process for myself actually years ago, I really sat with, you know, when I was writing down those qualities and characteristics of my partner, generosity was something that was really important to me. And it didn't come full circle until years later, you know, having experienced people who were not generous. And you know, why was this important to me? And when I sat with, when my partner's generous, then what? Then what does that elicit from me? Right. And so it's like when you actually allow that feminine part to come out and be in that space of generosity, even though the partner's not there, when we cultivate it for ourselves in that space of writing those things down, and you really allow yourself to feel, then who do I become in that space? And then you become that person, right? Regardless of whether they're physically there yet or not. Even writing letters to my future partner is something that I did, and just the love and connection and just real heart openness that I felt in those moments was so powerful. And that is the magnetism. That is what we get to then experience again, with or without it. We get to experience it with him.
That is so beautiful. I absolutely love that. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
And then he came. So what happened then? We have to come full circle for our audience. I don't know. We're at the top of the hour, but yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting. He is not like any man that I've dated before. You know, he sometimes spirit will send you everything you want and like more than what you could have even imagined at that point. Like he shows up for me in ways that I could never have written down that I wanted to manifest. I didn't even know I needed that, you know? But I'll tell this story because it's quite interesting, just really quick. My partner is from a completely different background to me. He's Iranian, I'm English. And that prior to me of doing all the inner work that I've done, that would have been a straight no for me. Just because I had my own interpretations and assumptions about what that might mean. You know, my worldview was a certain way. And that was so false. Like it was so, I really had to question my mind on it, you know. And I shared this with him right from the get-go. And I think one thing I will say, like when you are dating or you potentially meet your person, be honest, like be authentic, be you. Because the right people, like they won't run, like they won't even shake or like flinch. It really won't. And because I remember telling like my mom that I'd said to him, I nearly didn't come on this date because you're Iranian, like, and because I had these assumptions of what dating an Iranian man might mean, you know? She was like, "Whoa, I can't believe you said that." And I was like, but that was my truth, you know? And he squashed every one of them. Like, and he is the kindest, most selfless person I've ever met. Like, and what a gift that he's able to really reflect where I was able to get to with myself, like where I was able to accept these parts of me and love these parts of me that, there was resistance in me to do it.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah.
And in that truth sharing, that's where we get to do it. Like those really vulnerable moments of, I don't know if I should say this. It's almost that energy of like on the other side is the gift, that resistance, that growth resistance. There's a different resistance when it's misaligned, but that growth resistance is so important to lean into.
So
That thing
important.
that you're afraid to say, because what if it's like, oh, let me do that and see what happens, getting really curious in that space of with someone that you trust, obviously with someone that's aligned, because you feel the energy anyways. And if you don't say it, it's like this hanging thing in the air that's unaddressed. But when you clear it, it's like removing those veils and really being raw and bare and naked with each other, spiritually, energetically, and it's just such a gift that I think past generations didn't have. They really did wear veils, and sometimes the mystery is really good, especially in the beginning when you're getting to know someone, having that level of mystery. And some people intentionally choose to walk in life with that level of mystery. But when you're really deeply getting to know each other, there's nothing like being raw and real and vulnerable with someone, and for them to hold that and have that deep appreciation for it, and recognizing that it's not about comparison, and it's not about hurt feelings, and it's not about like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think? They're going to, being able to say, I had this worldview and you've completely shattered that. Like that is, to me, I would say someone coming from that culture, being from a background maybe that's misunderstood, such a gift to hear, no, wow, this is the way you show up, because then you get to know more about that culture, because most Iranians I know, because I know them deeply, are exactly what you described, so generous, so kind. So, and so it's really fascinating how we even create our worldviews that we create. A lot of it is because of media, because of those things that we hear our parents say or whatever it is. But it's just so beautiful to be raw and authentic in those moments of judgment and catching ourselves, and then we can laugh about it, and then it's not so serious. Like that acceptance can be fun too. It doesn't have to always be this really difficult moment of like coming to the truth of ourselves and having to face these uncomfortable situations. It can actually be really playful and fun too.
Absolutely. And life will always show you where your assumptions are. Like
Yep.
it will always show you what those beliefs are,
Yeah.
like, and where potentially you're not yet free. Like,
And divine union will absolutely like pull the rug out from under you to do that. I think that's one other thing I want to say is I think a lot of people have this understanding of what divine union is supposed to be, or what having your perfect partner, or whatever you want to call it, calling in that person. It's supposed to be this like magical Cinderella story. And it's like, no, wait, even Cinderella had obstacles to overcome. So let's just nip that in the bud. And a lot of things will come up if you haven't done your own personal development work. And if you haven't come to the truth of who you are by yourself, those things will be called to truth with that person. And so be ready for it. Don't expect that it's going to be, oh, this is not my person because I have these things to overcome. No, it's likely your person if those things are coming. Now, if it's a total energetic mismatch, if your body, and we come back to body wisdom, we talked a little about embodied decision making on the last podcast, but trusting our body's wisdom and how we energetically feel with someone is so important. I remember I had an experience where I was dating someone and my body was just like, don't go near this person. And I'm like, what is that about? It's just, and it was such a drastic shift from what was happening in the first 2 or 3 dates. And I just had to trust that, like it kept coming and kept, and logically I couldn't explain it. Physically, there were things, there were flags. There's always flags that we ignore, but it was so strong that I couldn't deny it anymore. And as soon as I stepped away, it was this whole portal of possibilities that opened up. And it's like, don't reject your truth, whether it's out loud with someone or to yourself, but like, listen. Really slow down and listen.
Oh wow. Yeah, thank goodness you did as well. I definitely feel like for those of you on a self-development journey, like one thing I found myself experiencing in this relationship is, I know a lot of things mentally,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like it's really in those sticky moments, it gives me the opportunity to live what I
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
It gives me an opportunity. It's almost like those years that I spent being single, learning and growing and developing myself,
Yeah.
like putting all of those skills into practice in my life and
Yeah.
relationship.
Mm.
It's like that was when I learned it. Here is where I embody it.
Oof, yes. That is a mic drop moment right there. And I just really want to call. So I want to pivot to just calling people forward who are hearing this and who are really magnetized to you and your energy and your transformation and what you've been through. Because as coaches and mentors and support people, we tend to attract people at that same level of transformation, maybe a few steps, before this where you're at now. And this is a substantial shift from where you were. So I think I almost like I want to ask, what is that offer that you have now, or what is that calling for people, that call to action to connect with you, if they're at what stage and they're ready to shift what? Like, this is so clear in this space.
Yeah, 100%. I would say it's for the woman that knows that there's something more stirring in her soul.
Mm,
She knows maybe she's achieved a certain things, maybe she feels, accomplished in many ways, but maybe there's just something that is stirring underneath. Maybe she can't quite pinpoint what that is, but she can feel a transformation like looming in her bones.
mm,
Because I feel like a lot of that is a deep knowing from your soul that
mm.
it is time to move forward.
Yeah, really calling these women forward. This is really powerful. Trusting that this will land, and you're listening and you're knowing, trusting that knowing and taking that aligned action is so, so powerful. And I always say to people too, if it's not me, and if you have the calling, trust and follow whoever is meant to support you in the space. So, if this conversation opened up that space for someone, start doing your research, start reaching out. But I would highly recommend, Kiera, you hold such a beautiful space. You have such a non-judgmental way of really calling into accountability too, is what comes through, and really holding that space of just pure truth, right? To be able to turn in, to be able to see and become that inner beauty that is already there. And it's just such a beautiful experience to know you, to witness you, to have these conversations and to be able to share them with the world. I'm so, so grateful for you. Thank you for being on the podcast, and thank you for sharing your gifts. And where can people find you, and what would you, if there was one pearl that you want to leave with, what would that be?
Mm. So people can connect with me on Instagram at I am Kiera-Louise. And I'm also hosting a retreat in Bali in October called Fempowered. So if the land of Bali calls you and you feel that stirring in your soul, please do reach out to me and I can send over more information on that.
Mm,
And coming back to one pearl of wisdom that I would really love to leave with your listeners, I think it's the idea that we get so caught up in needing to be her, needing to be this version of ourselves that is better or more pretty or beautiful or maybe slimmer or maybe she is more wealthy or successful.
mm,
Maybe she's got the relationship. Maybe she's got XYZ, you fill in the blanks, right? But I feel like we become so accustomed to wanting to become her that we've forgotten to be us.
Mm.
Like, you do not need to be her. You just need to be you.
Mm. Yes. Mm. Let's all take that one in. Nice, deep, grounding, beautiful breath. And release anything that is not aligned to that frequency, because that was so powerful. Kiera, thank you.
Thank you so much. I love you so much.
So beautiful. Hmm.